Well, now we'll study the cranial nerves. There are 12 cranial nerves, and first we'll study their nuclear origin, where they originate or where they end. The sensory nerves will end in the brain, the motor nerves will originate from it, and the motors are to the muscle, but they are also to the parasympathetic and the sympathetic systems. So, we'll study these cranial nerves, and for that, we'll draw a picture of the brain viewed from the medial side. So, we'll draw the hypophysis cerebri, and we'll put the pituitary gland here. Then we'll draw the corpus callosum. We'll put in the fornix. We are on the medial side of the thalamus, and we'll put a septum between the fornix and the corpus callosum, which is called as the septum lucidium. Okay. Then we'll see the thalamus here. And the thalamus on one side has the pituitary, but on the other side, the same thalamus has a pineal body. And this part of the thalamus is called as the hypothalamus, which connects the pituitary gland and the pineal body. Then the diagram is pretty simple. From the medial side, you would see the frontal lobe, the cerebral, frontal, parietal, occipital, and temporal. And then below this, you will start seeing the midbrain, and these are the superior and inferior colliculi of the midbrain, and the two pedicles of the midbrain. Then you will have the pons and the medulla. From this midbrain, from the pons and from the medulla will be the three cerebellar peduncles, the superior, middle, and inferior, on which will be connected the cerebellum. So now, the first nerve will go into a bulb which is situated on the cribriform plate. And from the cribriform plate, there is this forehead, here is the nose, and from the cribriform plate, there are 10 to 20 olfactory nerves, or the first nerve, into the nose, which relay here, the first relay is here, and then they go and end into the part of the caudate nucleus called the amygdaloid body. Amygdaloid body. These olfactory nerves carry the smell. The sensory part of the nose is supplied separately by the fifth or the trigeminal nerve. Then we'll place the eyeballs. The cornea of the eyeballs, and we will trace the temporal fibers like this, and they'll go to the same side of the medial malleolus. And the nasal fibers will actually cross at the optic chiasma and will go into the optic tracts of the opposite side. So nasal will cross and the temporal will not cross. Since the temporal would, this is the left side, this is the right side. So left side temporal is looking to the right. Therefore, the right side nasal is looking to the right. Therefore, the left side temporal and the right side nasal in the left optic tract is looking to the right. So this is the chiasma. It is affected by the pituitary gland, which is situated behind the chiasma here. So if there is a tumor here, optic chiasma can be affected. And you would remember that if the optic nerve goes, the left eye goes. But if the optic tract goes, the field of vision on the opposite side goes. Then these tracts basically end at the superior and the inferior colliculus on the posterior side of the midbrain. So they end at this, at the superior colliculus of the midbrain. So here's the midbrain, and this midbrain is going into the superior cerebral peduncle to the cerebellum. But these optic fibers have ended in the superior colliculus. Now the superior colliculus extends into a body which is the lateral geniculate body, a projection on the thalamus, posterior surface of the thalamus. So the fibers go into the lateral geniculate body. And from here they become the optic tract and end in the calcarine fissure of the occipital cortex. So if you want to see the calcarine fissure on the medial side of the optical cortex, here is the calcarine fissure. Here this one, the thicker one. And you would understand that these fibers would come like this and end into this. The lower part of the cortex, calcarine fissure, will be seen above. That means supplying the lower part of retina. And the upper part of the calcarine fissure would be seeing the lower field. That means the upper part of the retina. So this is the distribution of the second nerve. And you must remember that the supply of this area, of the posteriormost pole, is from the posterior cerebral artery, which is a part of the vertebrobasilar blood supply. And therefore, when there is a middle cerebral artery thrombosis, this area is spared because it's supplied by an alternative artery, and that is the area which supplies the major focused portion of the vision of the retina, and this is called as macular sparing. So after this, we'll make the this is the superior cerebral peduncle. We'll make the middle cerebral peduncle, which is coming from the pons. So here is the pons, and then the inferior cerebral peduncle, which is going into the medulla. And at the junction of the pons and the cerebellum, we'll see two prominences which are called as facial colliculus because they are made by the seventh nerve. Then we go to the medulla. We divide this medulla into four prominences, medial and lateral, right and left prominences on the posterior surface. And you are seeing between the three peduncles the midbrain, the pons, and the medulla. The pons and medulla is signified by the presence of facial colliculus. And this facial colliculus is because the sixth nerve nucleus is actually encircled by the fibers of the seventh nerve nucleus. So this is the sixth nerve emerging and the seventh nerve is circling around it, forming this colliculus. But after this, let us place the rest of the nerves. We've placed the first, we've placed the second. Let us place the rest of the nerves. So we'll make it a different color. We'll show it from here. This is the thalamus. Here you see the pineal body. And this is the superior colliculus. So you see the third nerve nucleus at the level of superior colliculus. At the same level is another nucleus which is called as the Edinger-Westphal nucleus. Which is called as Edinger-Westphal nucleus. Now this gives parasympathetic fibers. It gives parasympathetic fibers to the third nerve. Now these parasympathetic fibers, Edinger-Westphal nucleus gives parasympathetic fibers to the third nerve. The third nerve gives it to the ophthalmic branch of fifth. The fifth nerve, the trigeminal nerve, divides into ophthalmic, going to the eye, maxillary, and mandibular. So ophthalmic branch itself divides into three. The one going to the lacrimal, the other, the frontal, dividing into the supratrochlear and supraorbital, and the third is the nasociliary. So these fibers hike onto the nasociliary. Now if this is the optic nerve and this is the eyeball, the nasociliary nerve is coming like this on the medial side. It is giving fibers to the nose. We know how those fibers go, but it also gives fibers to the ciliary ganglion. And these nerves are called as the long ciliary nerves, then the short ciliary and into the eyeball, and from the eyeball into the constrictor pupillae, So the Ettinger-Westphal nucleus is responsible for constriction of the pupil in response to excess light. Show a torch and the pupil will constrict. Now that is called as pupillary reaction. Show the torch in the right eye and the right side pupil will constrict. That is called as direct pupillary reaction. But if you show the light on the right side and the left side pupil constricts, it is called as consensual pupil reaction. The pupil will also constrict if you try to see near and the eyes converge. That is called as accommodation reaction. Now, if the Ettinger-Westphal nucleus is involved, as in tabes dorsalis, the pupillary reaction, direct and consensual, is lost. But the accommodation is present. And this type of pupil is called as Argyll-Robertson's pupil. So this is the peculiarity of the third nerve, and that peculiarity is in the Ettinger-Westphal nucleus. Now the fourth nerve lies at the level of the inferior colliculus. And the part is that it emerges posteriorly below the inferior colliculus and goes anteriorly into the cavernous sinus. The fourth nerve supplies the superior oblique. You remember the formula SO4 whole thrice. LR6, lateral rectus 6th, superior oblique 4th, and the rest by 3rd. So superior oblique is supplied by the 4th, but the major part of the 4th nerve is that it emerges on the posterior surface of the brainstem. So the 3rd and the 4th nerve. Now there is the 5th nerve. The 5th nerve would go into the mandibular division of the trigeminal. Will go into the mandibular division of the trigeminal and supply the muscles of mastication. So 5th, motor part, muscles of mastication. Then the 6th nerve and the 7th nerve fibers winding around the 6th nerve, forming a projection here which is called as the facial colliculus, can be seen from behind. All right. So this facial colliculus, the thing is that the facial nerve we'll study later, but the 6th nerve ascends onto the lying in the inferior petrosal sinus, winds round the petrous temporal bone, the bend of Wolf, and can get paralyzed in supratentorial space occupying lesions. So the 6th or the abducent nerve is called the weakling of the cranial cavity. It supplies the lateral rectus, and if the patient is unconscious in head injury and you try to roll the head, the doll eye movements of the eyeball will demonstrate that lateral rectus paralysis. So that's the importance of the 6th nerve. Now after the 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th and 11th and 12th, The course in the branches become much more important, and therefore we'll cover it in the next class. The left side are the motor. You can see the third in the superior colliculus. You see the pineal body. The third in the superior colliculus. The superior colliculus going into the lateral geniculate body. The fourth at the level of the inferior colliculus. The fifth in the level of pons. The sixth and the seventh forming the facial colliculus at the base of the fourth ventricle, and the 8th, 9th, 10th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th we'll study the next time.